This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro. My guest today is Dylan Scott, aka the Hybrid Raccoon. Dylan is the 2024 HYROX US Champion. And if you haven't heard of HYROX, no sweat, I only did about 3 months ago. This fast-growing fitness racing sport combines running and functional movement exercises. Here's a quick overview of the format of every HYROX race. You run 1K before each of the functional movement exercises for a total of 8K running. You do 1,000-meter ski erg, 50-meter sled push, 50-meter sled pull, 80-meter Burpee Broad Jumps, 1,000-meter row, 200-meter farmer's carry, 100-meter sandbag lunges, and finish off with the brutal 100 wall balls. With over 40 global races in 2023, seeing over 90,000 athletes compete, it's referred to as the World Series of Fitness Racing, and in 2024, it's growing even bigger and faster. Now that you're up to speed, Dylan Scott has been dominating his recent races, often running 2 different races back-to-back on the same day or day after, which is absolutely insane. He trains about 4 to 5 hours a day while still working a full-time job and being a new father. Now, in talking to Dylan, he has a very unique ability to balance extreme discipline and grit along with an emotional intelligence and adaptability. I find this to be fascinating as Dylan coaches himself, so he must play the role of the ultra-competitive athlete while still managing the larger well-being of himself and his family. As we discuss topics like race brain and wiring for a tenacious never-quit attitude, one thing was most surprising. That while elite pro athletes may have much more at stake, like sponsorship, press, risking humiliation, the waves of doubt and anxiety and the battle of inner voices are the same that we all have. This means that we all have the opportunity to learn these skills of navigating intense emotional waves and cultivating mental fortitude and general resilience from an elite athlete. In training for and competing in my first HYROX event just recently, I've learned that along with the community being incredibly positive and supportive, anyone can access this sport, no matter your shape, your age, and what I've seen that it does is it develops grit, resilience, and mindset to be at your best when things are at their worst. This means that when shit hits the fan, we can default to our training to perform how we want and have the reserve power supply to tap into to be there for ourselves, our family, and those around us. This episode is an awesome one, so buckle up and let's get to it. Hey Dylan, great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
So you're up and at it, obviously. It's about 6:45 a.m. What does your daily workout look like?
So normally I'm going to be up somewhere in the fives, mid fives, 5:30 or so, pretty quickly onto the bike. And I like to put in a big block of aerobic training from 5:45 until 7:45 or 8. So we'll get in anywhere from 90 minutes to a little over 2 hours every morning. And that's normally conversational kind of effort just like this, where heart rates in the 120s, 115. Then midday, we'll do some kind of weights, maybe some ergs, being like a rower or a ski erg, or go for the easy trail run. And then afternoons is when my body feels like it's good to go. So from anywhere from 4 to 6 o'clock is when we're going to hit a hard hybrid style workout. And so every day I'm training 3.5 to 4.5 hours. Unless I have days where I'm just really tired and I'm like, all right, maybe we're just going to do an easy bike ride today and cut it.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is hybrid racing is still a relatively young sport here in the US. It's not huge and certainly not a sport that's going to be able to pay you huge dollars right now and allow you to just focus 100% on this. So how do you balance? You still have a full-time job, right? And you have a young child. How do you balance it all?
So, one, you have to be lucky with the job that you have. I didn't come into the job that I have having ever raced in the hybrid realm before. I integrated the racing in. So, the work that I do is in ergonomics, injury prevention, and corporate wellness programming with large manufacturing companies. Part of the benefit for that is that almost every work site I go to has a gym. So, my office, almost everywhere I travel, is right inside the gym. My change out to change back into work clothes time is about 5 minutes. So if I'm in the middle of the day and I'm like, all right, I got to get in a 45-minute high intensity workout, I step out of my office at 12 and I'm back into my office by 12:55 dressed and ready for a 1 o'clock meeting. So there's very little room for transitional time. And so you have to be efficient with things and then have flexibility. Luckily, I do have a lot of flexibility with my work. My hours can be weird sometimes. Sometimes I'm into the manufacturing facility really early, depending on where I'm at and what their shifts are like. Sometimes it's late, but I have a boss who's very much I don't want you sitting at a desk for no reason kind of guy.
Awesome.
Do your work, live your life. If you are in the office at 6 in the morning and you want to dip out and go train from 8 to 10, and then you're back in there from 10 to 3, and then you dip and train because you're coming back again at 6 p.m. and you're going to be there from 6 to 8, I don't care. Just do what you need to do. And with that, as long as I'm adaptable as a person, I can twist and make my training work, which is why I've been self-coached ever since I went into the sport. I was like, there is no program that is going to allow me to follow any consistent pattern that matches up with my life. So I'm just going to have to make this stuff up on the fly and just know that I have a decent background in sports physiology and what it's going to take to create a world-class athlete and performance. And how do I mix all that in based off of some biofeedback from things like Whoop and others just objectively, how do I feel today? What's my mental state? What's my emotional state? Is it ready for a big workout? Or have I had things going on with the 1-year-old? Are me and the wife, are we doing good? Are we communicating well? Or are we having a fight? Maybe I have an idea for a hard afternoon session, but we've been arguing and things aren't sitting right. We're not doing that session. We're going home and we're sitting down and talking and getting that ironed out before we even worry about trying to train hard. Because I think a lot of that, if your mind's not settled and your heart's not in the right place, you can't direct your energy in the right area. So it'll just eat at me. If something feels like it's not right, then I'm glad that I have the kind of adaptability to be like, okay, training is not the focus right now. We got to go work on something else. And so that's how it all pieces together with work and training and life.
Yeah, that's really well articulated and beautifully designed. It sounds like you're taking so much of the emotional intelligence into account. And I think that fluidity and that real-time feedback you're getting on the complexity of life, because for me, I don't know about you, but when it comes to parenting and being a dad, there's life before and life after. And I don't mean in the sense that, oh yeah, my schedule has changed and all of that. I mean that like on a biological, physiological, on a mental, emotional, spiritual level, things that were dormant, like my epigenetics got activated and all of this stuff that in humans is just waiting for reproduction and to play this archetypal role kicks online. And once it does, everything else is out the window. And so having that ability to adapt with this complexity sounds really well crafted.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that thing that I've said was that when he was born, what I found was that like my emotional capacity on the high end and on the low end expanded, that the potential for the lowest of lows got higher and the potential for the highest of highs got higher. And I could definitely feel that just with him coming in the world. I was like, wow, I can love someone more than I knew I could love. And then I was also like, and I could lose someone and be hurt more than I think I could ever be hurt now that he's here. And so, yeah, something definitely shifts And it's not just your schedule, it's your outlook and your overall sense of purpose.
Yeah, it changes. One way I've looked at it is before you have a child, you're the center of your universe. It doesn't mean that you're selfish and you're still considering other people, you're compromising, collaborating. But once you have a child, they're literally the center of the universe. And so instead of everything revolving around you and your needs, all of a sudden you're secondary at best, usually tertiary. It's a totally different perspective of living.
Yeah, because you also can't, and I want to make sure not to make it out I'm the one that does the majority of the parenting. That is not the case. My wife is a superhero. She handles so much with him. But like you're saying, when it comes to who's the center of the, they don't care about your schedule.
This episode is brought to you by Zero Shoes. Barefoot inspired, minimalist shoes with a natural fit and feel that supports natural motion. All right, guys, so I've dealt with knee pains and foot issues pretty much my whole life. I could never run more than a mile because of it. I always just wrote it off and said, all right, I'm just a sprinter. But the reality was there were underlying issues. And I was using things like orthotics. When I went to the doctors, they brought up surgery as an option, which I knew was ludicrous. So I tried a bunch of different things. I did physical therapy. I worked through building up my arches with yoga. And while some of these things helped, nothing allowed me to run until about a year and a half ago, where I listened to a buddy of mine who always wore barefoot shoes, and I tried a pair of Zero shoes. These are zero drop shoes, which means the sole is much thinner and it allows you to have much more flexibility and contact with the earth, but also they have a wide toe box, which allow your feet to open back up into their natural form. What we don't realize is with traditional shoes, we're binding our feet to the point where after a year and a half, I can't wear any of my old shoes because when I do, my feet are so bound and blistered. Since switching to Zeros, I'm running 2 to 5 miles comfortably about 3 to 4 times a week. So I definitely want to share it with you guys. Check out Zero Shoes. Huge, huge fan.
They don't care about your time. Like it doesn't
No,
matter. And
no.
you can't expect them to when they're young. They don't understand. So you have to be willing to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe today my alarm was set for 5:45, but this is a 3 a.m. day. Like your day might start at 3 because their day started at 3, and you are their everything as a parental kind of unit together. They can't do anything without you yet, and so for sure, your life takes a back seat, which honestly is for some people I think is a really good thing because some folks their development curve when they become a parent because they have to finally be the secondary person is
Yeah.
huge. I think I was really lucky to be an older brother to a lot of siblings that when my son did come along, I was like, oh, I've played close to this role before. It wasn't that different because I was so much older than some of my siblings that like it wasn't like, oh, this kid came to life. I was like, oh, first bottle, no. First diapers, no. All of the, I'd been there before. Not in the emotional role, but definitely in the responsibilities role of having to take care of a child and what it took on a just a day to day basis. All right, get them up, get breakfast ready. Okay, check in with them. How are they doing? Oh, they're having a breakdown over this. Okay, let's talk about it. I'd already been there a decent amount. And so Maria, which is my wife, both of us are lucky to have been older siblings and have a little bit of hands on training, which has really made this first year not nearly as difficult as I think it can be.
Yeah, I remember the first year with our son. It was I felt like when we hit his first birthday, I was celebrating his survival. Like we kept him alive for a year. I was like, all right. After that, everything felt less critical. Not that everything isn't crucial.
And see, I'm so like we got to be. I'm more scared now because of his walking and stuff, but he's on the edge of it. And like, dude, we got these hard concrete floors, and I just watch his little clumsy self bumble around. I'm like,
Yeah. They're rubber, fortunately. Literally, like their bones have the flex in it and everything. But yeah, it's terrifying. And I remember when Koro, our son, started walking, it felt like the water was rising. Like every day, his reach got higher. Then he started stacking blocks and then he's climbing on things. And so you'd keep on moving things out of reach. And eventually, like, you're just chasing it. So it's such a trip, man. It really is. But yeah, there's no putting that cat back in the bag.
No, he's definitely becoming more mobile by the second. And every 20, you turn around 20 seconds later, how do you get up there? Dang, he can do that now? Okay, all right, we got to big proof that one.
Yeah, it's so amazing how fast the development happens. And on a weekly or even daily basis, new things are just coming online and starting to fire.
And then when it does, it is the same thing. I think about, so have you done CrossFit before? Done like double unders?
No, I have not done any CrossFit.
Okay, so double unders, that's just a movement where you're jumping and the rope's going to pass under you twice. All right. And it's a rhythm thing, it's a pattern thing. And when you get it, very quickly after you get like one or two, suddenly it clicks. And you're like, oh, now I can do eight. And you get the pattern down really fast. And when that happens, I see that very similar to like babies acquiring a skill. The second that pattern clicks, it's there now. And with that, I see that with him, where he's like, a pattern clicks and it's there. And it took me forever to figure out how to do them. I remember I was at like my college CrossFit gym, and I'm in there, and there's this 65-year-old lady doing them, and I can't do them. And I'm like, I don't jump well, but I don't jump that bad. Like, I could do this. And finally, when it clicked, I was like, oh, it was just a pattern. And that's what with kids is when that pattern clicks, they go, oh, it's just a pattern. And then it just stays. And so the 24.2 CrossFit workout for the open had double unders in them. And I hadn't done double unders in months probably. And I go and it's the double unders at one point every round. And I pick up the rope and I go, and the pattern's just there. And there's the same as riding a bike, the same as learning to walk. It's once the pattern's there, it takes maybe one or two. You're like, what is? Oh, there it is. And it's just cool to watch that click for them as well because
So
they get
cool.
it, and then you see them repeat it, and then they're like, oh, this is how we do this.
Yeah, I got goosebumps there because it's really this visual manifestation where you could see in real time the wiring that's taking place. And when you really get into this idea that their nervous system, their neurology is all getting wired in real time, it's so powerful because we spoke about this a little bit previously with parenting. A lot of times people are like, oh, yeah, what are you doing traveling with them? They're not going to remember any of this. But the reality is, these experiences are still wiring them, and it's the underlying
Mm-hmm.
program that sets them up for how they live their lives.
Yeah, whether or not it is a conscious memory that they can pull on doesn't mean that it's not embedded in them. So, like I think I saw something from you the other day, like working out with your son. Like he was, I think maybe he was on the bike, you were running or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, we've
I
been
mean,
doing it
I know at
lately.
this age, yeah, I know at this age, he'll definitely remember that kind of stuff. But even from the very beginning, my kids just turned one, but right before he saw me doing burpees in the house, and I swear he started trying to do them. He would stand up, he would fall down, and he would stand up again, and he would jump back down, and just repeated every time I did one. He did like three or four, and then he got bored. But if a 1 year old can understand the concept of a burpee, oh, okay. I guess one of the things we do as humans is we stand up and fall down and stand up again. So that seems pointless, but okay.
Yeah, and that mimicry is such a big thing in kids and mimicking those that are around them playing different roles. And so there's such a positive reinforcement going back. And I think that's where one of my values is inspire, don't require. And I fail at it often, but that's what I'm holding there as the guide, right? If I can hold that, then it's working. And I think with working out, that's been one of the things I've never told Koro that he has to do anything, but he's developed this interest. And now he's at the age he's 6 now, where he's really able to do things with us, and it's really fun. But yeah, the same. I saw you were just like running sprints, pushing your son, and awesome. And I used to do the hiking pack. I used to throw him in and
Yeah.
do everything, like doing squats or go on the Versa climber. And it's just, yeah, does he remember it? No, I show him the photos and he's, oh, cool. But he's into it now. So can I say that feeds into it or not? For sure. I don't know, but I believe it does. And I think you're still definitely developing this co-regulation together and wiring together that's very positive for bonding.
Yeah, and even if they're not consciously grabbing hold to it, I know I am. I know that I'm like, hey,
Right.
this is it's a heck of a, it's a great experience for me. I'm getting to spend time with my kid, and that's wonderful. So, like you're saying with that co-regulation, because you also start to find where they find what they're looking for in you and with your partner. You start to figure out your role for them. I know what
Yeah.
I play for my son. I know what my wife plays for my son. And whenever he wants whatever it is, he goes to that person. And that's the only person that he really at that moment feels can give him that. There are times when he wants mom and there ain't nothing I can do. And he'll crawl out of my arms and through a briar patch to go find her. And so yeah, you start to set up kind of these relationships with, oh, this is what I do with dad, this is what I do with mom. And it doesn't have to be set in a specific gender role way. I find that it falls that way a lot.
Yeah, it
That
typically
especially
does.
with
I do
him.
too.
Yeah, like when it comes to roughhousing and playing and stuff like that and headbutting, like he could come across the bed and just wham. And then when he wants to be nurtured and held and soothed, he goes to her.
Totally.
Um,
The problem solving thing will come to me, and yeah, it's interesting. And all the softer stuff go to mom, and she's got that handled so well. And yeah, but I think that separation is, we live in this world where it's tricky, right? Everyone wants to have the right and the freedom to do everything, but there are also these archetypal roles that exist within us, and they do for a reason. And I'm not saying that it's always that way, but it
mhm.
often is. And when it falls into that groove, that's one thing I've learned. Don't ever try to fight that. Like, embrace that and support it. And I'm sure it's just as an athlete, right? You find the things that you're best at, you nurture that, and you try to develop some of the others, but you know that that's never going to be your strongest thing.
Yeah, for sure. There are like we can relate that back over to HYROX and how what I raced and how there's multiple facets of that sport. There are portions of that race that I am better at. That's just my skill set, and that's what it falls into. And it falls into me being 6'2", 165 pounds long, and I'm probably not the best sled pusher, and I'm probably a good runner. So there are parts, just like in life, there are going to be things that you're suited for and things that you're not. And now that doesn't mean that there aren't times within the race that I'm required to do these things. So I better not shoo away from developing myself in that area. But at the same time, I'm not going to force myself to try to be the fastest sled pusher in the race because that's not me. I need to be developed there to be fully rounded. But I would be eschewing a lot of the skill set that I have in other areas if I was just like, no, I have to be this. This is what I have to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's this self personal growth book that I had read years ago. That was it, Strength Finder, but it was this general idea, right? Find the thing that you're naturally good at and really develop that so that you can be the best at that versus the incremental increase you'll get in those areas that just are weaknesses. I want to jump into some of the high rocks in the month you've had, but first, it just, when you're talking, it reminded me of, so we were going, this was our first High Rocks in Fort Lauderdale. I did a men's double, and then later in the day with my wife and two other parent friends, we did a relay. And our son came to the second one, and we got to see you crossing the finish line, which was awesome. And that was where I was like, whoa, man, this dude is on such another level, which is one of the really cool things about High Rocks, by the way. You have people like me who are just going for their first time and just happy to get through it and everything. And then you're right there alongside the elite pros like yourself, and the vibe is just amazing.
Yes, it is.
And to that point, our son, he was like, all right, so do I get to compete too? And we're like, we'll get you set up with something. You could try out some of the machines. And so he was really amped up. And then afterwards, I brought him over. It was the end of the night because it was the relays, the last races. And so I brought him over to the starting tunnel. And I was like, all right. And so this is where at the beginning of the race, everyone comes in here, the screens are on, and then they have a countdown like a rocket ship: 10, 9, 5, four, two, one. When I said one, he took off like a gunshot and just booked out. And everything in me wanted to be like, wait, no, stop. But in that moment, I was like, wait, let's go. And so I just started running with them, and we just started running the lap until eventually he got close to the final person. I was like, all right, we got to get out of here. But it was such an amazing experience. And then he just wanted to tell his friends. And so by then the racing was over. And so we got his whole group of friends, and they all did this lap around. And it was such a cool experience. It was like one of those core memory type things.
You should know if you put a kid in a tunnel and do a countdown, they're gonna run at the end. It's gonna happen. You can't get to one and be like, and now we stay still. It's not gonna work.
No, and that's one of the biggest things and challenges and learnings that I've gotten with a young one, and I'll still forget at times, but they don't have impulse control. It is literally not developed in their brain until their late teens. And so as adults, that's one of the trickiest things to remember. But when we can, it removes so much of the frustration or the conflict. Yeah, because it could easily be confused as needing discipline, right? But nope, that's not where the discipline comes in. That's literally not having the ability to stop from jumping into action.
Yeah, trust me, I grew up in a very strict household where I was getting in trouble for things at 5, 6 years old that were chalked up to, oh, he needs discipline. And I look back at some of them. I don't know if discipline was the answer for that one. I think that was just me saying, oh, this is a bad parent. My parents came from bad parents. They came from bad parents. And to have gotten me to where I've gotten to, they've done a heck of a job.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is not understanding a kid because nobody taught you about kids. And when you were a kid, you didn't get treated like a kid. You got treated like an adult. Like you're 6, and they're like, no, you're just a bad small adult.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not the same thing. You are 6 years old. You don't know what. There's some things, but the rest of it, it is a thought that goes from here to action like that. And there is no barrier. And your job, I think, as a parent is to help them. Their brain's going to have to develop on its own, but develop the reason why. You're going to have to answer that question a million times. Why? To help them understand the reasoning to eventually get to where that barrier does start to build up and they logic their way to, oh, that's why I should do that. But that's why I should do this. Or this is why I should delay this thing until this time. Like you're trying to help decision-making skills and emotional intelligence and resilience.
Yeah.
And it's hard to spank that into a child because normally what you do is I was brought up, getting spanked, got my ass beat plenty of times. And what you build there, what you think you're building is respect, and you're just building fear.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to come to you. And you're like, why do my kids never why don't they want to talk to me about things? Why don't they want to spend time around us? And they're like, they're scared to fuck up. Because all they've ever known when they did something that wasn't the right thing to you, and they didn't understand why it wasn't the right thing to you, was discipline. And so they start to just go inside and they're like, all right, I can't be myself. I have to put this mask on and be what they want me to be. And then you start having identity issues and you struggle with all of that as you get older because you never got to develop as you. You got to develop as what was expected of you. And then you wonder why they moved out and they changed. Yeah, they were never them. You never got to meet them. You made them hide that.
And then you spend your whole life trying to get that back. And one thing I see also is we write our definitions of these really critical parts of our lives, things like love and success and connection and community, based on what that looks like in our nucleus environment. And a lot of us hold really unhealthy definitions of these things, that pursuit of redefining them. And I think this happens generationally, like you're talking about, from your grandparents to your parents, and then to you, to your son. And we get to refine that and improve upon it, hopefully. Brute force training is my go-to for high-quality, durable workout gear. From sandbags and sandbells to rucksacks and weighted vests, these guys are consistently innovating and improving to make their gear work even better. They're vet-owned, so they know a thing or two about being battle-tested. Crafted in the USA to withstand the most grueling workouts, I grab the sandbag when I go on family walks, or I use it in high-intensity interval training to get a killer full-body workout while only needing one piece of gear. I also travel with my sandbag. I just empty it out, folds up, and then when I get there, I fill it up and I'm good to go. Brute Force is doing a lot of work around unstable load training, which when combined with breath work and a mindful practice, it supports healthy regulation of your central nervous system. In normal speak, that means you're able to be more effectively navigating the challenges that life throws at you. Check out their full line of gear at bruteforcetraining.com/growth to get 10% off.
Yeah, and that's what you hope to happen is generational change. And I think one of the, I don't know where I heard this. I don't remember who said it or why, but it's helped me with my relationships with people who I was under coming up. And it was that at first you idolize them, then you demonize them, then you humanize them. And going through that 3-step process really helped me to go through because, yeah, there was times like, this is dad. He is everything. He's amazing. And then you start to see all the flaws. Like, dad's really messed up. Maybe dad's not a good guy. And then you go, oh, dad's a person. I get it. He's not perfect. He's never going to be perfect. I shouldn't have expected perfection. And once you get to that point, if there was any broken links in relationships and you spend the time, you can normally, and I say normally because some relationships can be fixed, start to fix it because you go, this is a human. I get why they did what they did.
Yeah. You also get to transcend some of these roles that we have at different roles are dynamic, just like anything else. And when we treat them as fixed, I think that's where things get stagnant. And with father-son, to be able to transcend that dynamic of father-son, you still hold that relationship, but to then be able to be equals and to be friends, that's a beautiful thing. And I think getting to that point of humanizing is necessary in order to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, you have to. And that's with a lot of things. So when I came in to HYROX and stuff, early on, a lot of the guys I race with now I looked up to. And I was like, these guys are bigger than life. I was like, these are the guys that I see in the elite race. These are the guys that I see on Instagram and YouTube. And I look at them, I'm like, these guys are a different level. And then I raced them and I started to beat them. And then I started to know them. I was like, oh, they're just people. But you don't know that. You think that if you've never been to the top of anything, and let's just say this is a niche hybrid racing sport. I'm not the top of one of the big 5 sports. But what you do find out is at the top of anything, niche or not, normally it's a lot of the same qualities that you would find at the top of other things. And it really starts to level the whole world in your mind because you go, if I thought this guy was crazy and out of reach, and I realized that he's not that different than me, I bet I probably have made those same assumptions in a lot of other areas. And it does level out the relationship dynamic changes. And now the guy you watched on TV, you send text messages to, and it's different.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to HYROX. I said I saw you win first in Fort Lauderdale. You've had an incredible, it was like a 1 week stretch or less, I think, right? 6 days. But you dominated in Fort Lauderdale and then you went right on, 5 or 6 days later to DC for the US Championships, which you crushed it. I think, a minute and a half between you and second place, which was like the same swing between second and sixth place, just to give context for people. Totally dominated, but that wasn't it. Then you went right on the next day to compete in the Go Ruck, which you got second by 1 or 2 seconds. All right, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, the DC win was huge because that brings you into the World Championships in Nice later in June. So
Correct.
that must have been one of the big milestone victories you had on the horizon for you. How did that feel?
So coming into that race, having coming off of Fort Lauderdale, I would like to say I was really confident, but it wasn't confidence as much as it was. I was like, wow, you raced really good last week. A lot of pressure, huh? And so I knew at least that I had it within me because I'd just done it. And I was like, okay, I want you to recover and replicate the same taper you did going into Miami. And if you do that, you should give your body a very similar set of conditions to work with. And I did that. And I think I felt a little better in Miami than I did in DC. just because of the race time. I go to bed pretty early. We raced at 8:30 that night. To get yourself jacked up at 8:30 at night, for me, we've been up since 5 or so, is a bit different. But either way, the race goes off, and I'd been talking before about what my plan was, and it was just I'm going to go to the front because I think my best chance of finishing in the top three is racing like I'm going to win and seeing if I can create separation with a group. And if we can get separation with a group, I think we can burn off a lot of people. And it comes down to 2 or 3 guys. I'm like, I like that a lot better than being in a group of 6, especially late in the race, because wall balls aren't my strongest station. And so when you're in it, everything is fast and slow at the same time. In that, like, your brain's, you get race brain, of course, because your heart rate's so high and it's trying to shunt blood to the rest of your body. So sometimes your operating system up there isn't firing as quick. But when you've trained so much and done these same things over and over again, it's also really slow because you're like, oh, I've been here. And so you're sitting in the moment and the moment's moving fast, but you're moving slow. And it's a weird feeling, to be honest, because you're very conscious of everything. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, we're also 20 minutes into the race. And so it's hard to explain, to be honest with you. But I saw myself coming out of the sled pull and I was in the lead. I was like, all right, this is a bad position for everybody else because I'm not known as a first 3 station guy. I'm known as a last 4 stations, or really more middle 4 stations than hang on at the wall balls kind of guy. And I'd said I need to just put myself out there, see what happens. And so I get to the lead, come out of the sled pull, start running, and just feel great. And as the lead builds, I keep getting updates from people on the side. They're like, hey, it's 24 seconds, it's 40 seconds, it's a minute. And the whole time, I'm just going, they've got really good film coverage of this. If I now, I am not going to be a happy person. Like, they're going to have this all on video, and I'm going to look so bad. And I just kept running. And my wife asked me afterwards, she was like, how'd you look so scared the whole time? I said, because, babe, I was terrified. Like, I'm about to have the biggest blow up in HYROX history if I don't win this. So it wasn't until I had done like 60 odd wall balls before I was like, all right, I'm not going to blow 40 wall balls in a minute and a half, given how I feel right now. I think I'm okay.
And Graham, who finished second, went unbroken in his wall balls too. So there's that healthy amount of fear to drive, but also, yeah, you never know what's going to happen there.
I know that from the best guys to me, I can give up 50 seconds. There is a easy 50-second. Like, I've watched guys give a minute and a half away just because you come in and you think you're okay. And then you do that first squat and you go, oh no, like everything's gone. Like when I get below parallel, I'm done. And your heart rate shoots up and then your blood can't get up to the shoulders and your shoulders start to give out and you can't throw the ball. And then you just stand there and you're like, it's not like running where you can run at a slow pace and still make progress. It is a full range of motion or that rep don't count. And we saw that happen to a couple of guys who were sitting in good positions. And then all of a sudden, no rep. And you're like, dude, you're missing it by 2 inches. It's like, those 2 inches aren't there.
The psychological impact of no reps when you're already hurting so badly. Like on paper, it sounds, oh yeah, that sucks. You have to do one more. But when you're in it, and that's just a killer, right?
Yeah, because you have to do one more, but also the one that you didn't count. So it's like, I just did 98% of this movement. And now I got to do another. And then, nope, that didn't count either. No. And then they start to stack. And then mentally, you're like, I only had 30 left. And I can't seem to get the number to go down. You're like, how many left? 30. Still 30? Yep, still 30. Oh my God, please. And so, yeah, it does. It starts to just beat you down. And when somebody's going unbroken beside you, you're like, this is my worst nightmare coming true. It's like in the dreams where you try to run and you can't run fast. It's exactly what it feels like. So, yeah, like I get across the finish line and And then immediately my wife and son are like right over to the side. So I go do some shenanigans on stage, just being me.
Oh,
Just
that
run over.
front roll was awesome.
I had planned that. I have a plan for if I win races, what I'm going to do. It's got to be there. At the same time, while it's competitive sport and racing, all of it's theatrics.
Yeah.
And you're trying to put on a show.
And that's also visualization, right? Like you're visualizing yourself winning. All right, this is what I'm going to do when I win.
For sure. And I had spoken to somebody about like visualization and the whole aspect of going through races and seeing like what your splits are going to be and all that kind of stuff. And I told him, I said, you can't visualize yourself to a championship. You can't not do the work. Be like, but I sat down and I saw myself do it. And that's not what visualization does. Visualization allows you to do is to say the positive side of what if. A lot of times people say, what if this happens? What if that happens? But always in the negative. But I had watched the racing going, what if I pull 143 for the ski erg and I come out and I feel okay? And what if I'm the first person out at the sled pool? And if you go through the what ifs of the race going and then it starts going right, you're not afraid as much of it going wrong. Because I've been here before, not really, but it just opens the door for you to take a chance. It is how I see visualization.
Yeah, that's so interesting because also I imagine with race brain and not having the ability to think through things, you really default to the training. And when the visualization is what's stringing along the training to a version of how it can play out, I wonder how much we can default to that and that becomes the driving narrative subconsciously.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. There are guys in the sport that are known for blowing up and dropping out. And let me tell you, whenever something goes wrong in their race, you see it and you're sitting there counting, you're just counting down. And you're like, all right, when are they bailing? Like, when is that default network in that head going to go? This is where we give up. And so you have to work really hard to not let that become default. And you want to ingrain in you. So when you see the success happening, and I've gone through races where I've seen bad things happen, but it's always bad thing happens. Here's how we rebound. This is where the recovery happens. You even game plan for things to go wrong, but you never game plan for when things go wrong. How do you fail? You game plan for how do you recover?
So this is one of the areas where it's so applicable to all areas of life. You're obviously the top of the top pro elite athletes. I know from me training for this, one of the things I was confronted with is the idea of quitting. Like when I'm training, all right, I'm tired, I'm done, I've got nothing left, and you just call it, right? And what this has taught me is that's bullshit. There's so much more left in the tank every time, and cultivating the ability to move beyond that. So is that something you actively cultivate, or is it something you've always had? I'm fascinated by it because it has not been innate for me.
A mix. There's always been like a tenacity in me, but there were definitely times when I was younger that quitting was more viable of an option. And there were times that I did quit, drop out of races, stuff like that. And that was, those were times when the tough parenting helped, when, they got on me and they were like, we don't do that. And now some of the reasoning might have been because that embarrasses us, but also fair to be like, there are people that put trust and faith in you and they believe in you. You probably shouldn't embarrass them. So, all right. So there were times that I got in trouble as a kid for that. Hey, I don't care. You might get dead last. Don't drop out. And that got beat into me. And then I think that really what started to build all this up was, so senior year of high school, I got a back injury that took me out of sports for almost 3 years. And that whole time, there was never a question of if I was going to come back and be competitive as an athlete again. It was always when, how long is this going to take? And what are you willing to do to keep that mental edge to be able to come back and be aggressive still? And during that time, like, it took me to some dark places that I'm not happy that I went to. But one thing didn't ever really leave, and it was the competitive mental edge of like, we do not quit. All right, this has been a year. This has been 2 years. This has been, all right, you're on 3 years of not racing. You giving up yet? Now we'll be back. And it was during that time from like 18 to 21 that I realized just how fucking hard headed I am. That I was like, you're gonna have to come back. And that has, I think, that 3 year development really helped to build this resiliency in the fact that, like, all right, when things are going wrong, when you want to bail out of a race or a workout, unless there is a logical reason like injury, or you look at it and you go, all right, what's the cost benefit to me as an athlete right now? Am I just fatiguing myself for no reason when I have a big session in 2 days? Then sometimes I'll look at the workout and go, this isn't worth it. But it has to be logically consistent with why I should stop what I'm doing. And it can't just be, I don't feel good. Because I've had workouts, like I've slated in, hey, we'll go for 45 minutes for an easy aerobic session, and I'll be 20 in, 25 in. And I'm like, dude, you just feel too beat up today. Cut it. And I'll cut it. And I won't feel this feeling, oh, you quit on yourself. Because I didn't. I just said, this is what we programmed in, but your body's going to give you 25. Now, there are times like yesterday, I was doing a 60-minute row test. Far as you can row in 60 minutes. And I was probably 8 minutes in when my mind was like, you have 52 minutes of this left. This sucks. But I knew that the only thing I was quitting there was just the effort. It would have been, I don't want to give effort for 52 more minutes. Nothing was hurt. I wasn't overly tired. I had nothing that I was tapering for. It was just, dude, I don't want to row 146 pace for another 52 minutes. And
did that break for you?
Say what?
That mental pattern, does that break for you after a certain point?
It'll go in a long workout like that, it goes in waves. So normally I know that if I have a workout that's in the 60-minute range of just consistent hard effort, you're going to feel just as bad 10 minutes in as you are with 10 minutes to go. It'll hit in a wave where you're like, there's no way I can do this 5 more times over. And then you get to halfway and you start to get your first little glimpse of light. And you're like, oh, I'm halfway. And then you get to 20 minutes left. You're like, dang, I still got 20 minutes left. And then you get to the last 10. You're like, I haven't felt any worse or better than when I was 10 minutes into this workout. I'm going to be fine. And then you start like tightening the screw a little. And now there's 5 minutes left and 3. You're like, oh, there we go. We're almost done. And it starts to let up. But it's definitely this kind of wave pattern of you're never going to make it. You're fine. You're never going to make it. You're fine. And you just have to ride the waves.
Yeah, that mental relational roller coaster is so fascinating. And it's amazing hearing you talk about it because it's a lot of the same cycles that I go through. And me being an absolute nothing of an athlete compared to you, what that tells me is, all right, we've all got these underlying programs. And no matter what it is that we're doing, like we can glean from this, push a little further. Don't set the goal of getting through the whole thing. Find that next sizable bite that you can get through and then just do it again and again. And yeah, it's amazing.
And that's it, what you said right there. It was the same thing I was saying when I was like, I started racing with guys I used to watch on TV and realizing how human they are. And that's it. And like people will say that, we're like, oh, we watch you elite guys and I don't know how you do. And I'm like, actually, you're going through the same experience I am. I'm just going through it a little faster. That's it. You feel the same pain thresholds that you're pushing up against, the same mental barriers you're facing. Very similar. There's a little more at stake on our end from a reputational standpoint, from a monetary standpoint. But other than that, our experiences are 90% the same on race day. If people feel like, oh, these elite racers or athletes are out of touch, out of reach with how I can talk to them and relate to them within a race, no, we're not. It's very close.
It's so interesting. Like the days leading up, this is my first type of race like this ever. And I'm turning 45 next month. So starting late, the like 4 days leading up to it, my anxiety was just like, on a whole nother level. Like I can't even compare it to regular anxiety. It's just holy shit, like sheer terror at times.
Mhm. And so I had said there was another group that I was talking with, and I told him, I said, 3 hours, 4 hours before the race, I texted my mom. I was like, Mom, I want to go throw up right now. Like the mental anguish that comes with pre-race anxiety is really heavy. It is crushing me right now. So yeah, it's the same thing. Race week, and it builds. And a lot of us, we use exercise as a way to deal with anxiety. When you're tapering, you're not supposed to be working out. So you're like, well, I can't do the thing that helps me deal with the problem and so
It's
and then
cagey.
yeah. Oh, you're like a caged animal. And that's why when the gun goes off at the start of the race, you see so many people go way too high. The cage just got open. It's a dead sprint. And you're like, if you're a controlled and seasoned racer, you're like, the caged animal doesn't come out in the first 10 minutes. It comes out in the last 15. And that's when it's like, all right, where's the animal? There it is.
I saw you had posted with Fort Lauderdale that I think there was some doubt out there, and you had posted about that, which, by the way, I love how open and transparent you are through your whole process of all of the ups and downs of what you're feeling and what you're going through. I think it's so empowering for people like me who are aspiring to just be the best version of myself, never to be a competitive athlete, but to just keep getting better for myself. And so it's huge. What was going on there?
Just the same thing that's been going on for the last 15 years. That same wave of like, all right, you're afraid to race, you don't want to, you lose belief in yourself and your training, like all that goes away. And you have to sit down and you have to tell yourself why you are going to do okay. And you have to tell yourself why you're going to be able to handle the pain that's coming. And it's all of that that has never, it's never gone away from the very beginning of racing for me. Just like this fear of what's coming, how bad it's going to hurt, what you're going to go through, the emotional ups and downs, what if you fail, like all that. And you just have to, you have to sit down and deal with all of it before the race starts. And then after the race, whether it goes good, if it goes great, then you're okay. And then if it goes bad, like world championships for me last year was terrible, awful race. And I had to sit down and really process all that and then convince myself that, okay, this was a one-off. You're not this. You are going to be okay. You didn't disappoint. You didn't let all these people down. So you have to talk yourself off the ledge and be like, all right, it's good. But it's really just, it happens before every race. It happened before Fort Lauderdale. And then I was like, oh, 6 days ago, you went 55 minutes. That doesn't matter. So it happens right again before DC. And it didn't happen as big before the Go Ruck race because I was like, all right, I got the job done because I was like, thank goodness I don't have to fly out to Anaheim in May and try to raise my way to Worlds. Like I've secured that. So while I was racing Go Ruck with a very beat up body, I had a very calm mind, luckily. And I was like, you go win this and you're amazing. And if you don't, who cares? So at least in that case, very peaceful for that one. But yeah, and I'm sure before Worlds, given that it's a little less than 3 months out, I'm going to be on the plane ride over to France, trying to look online and figure out what's the quickest return flight home. Like, actually, no, get me out of here. I don't want to be in France. Like, this is not for me. I am not that guy.
Oh man, I can't wait to see it. So one last thing I wanted to ask. Tell me about the name, the Hybrid Raccoon, which I love.
So where that came from was this would have been in like 2022-ish. We were at a race in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And I can't remember why I was so sleep deprived, but I was. And when I get really any amount of sleep deprivation, I start getting big dark circles under my eyes. Like it seems genetic. My dad gets it, my brother gets it, and they're more noticeable than other people's. And I also have a habit of I travel a ton for work, so I'm always just eating like whatever. I'll just stop at a gas station. I'm like, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. So my friends, dude, look at you right now. You're eating just food out of a like gas station bag. You got these big old dark. you're like a raccoon of a human. I
Like
was like,
looking over the bag.
of course I am. Like, I'm a hybrid raccoon. And with that, I just took it, changed my Instagram name to the Hybrid Raccoon, and was like, all right, I'm running with this. And since then, everybody's like, nah, that really matches up. This dude is a wild raccoon of a human, and I'm here for it.
That's awesome. I love it. I had an idea. If you ever want to make some products, make some really trashy type food products, go with like Stoopfuls or Twinkies and just make them look and taste like trash, but actually have them be good fuel for competing. So that's my idea.
From a marketing standpoint, if the branding would be on, they would know who is associated with. Oh, this is what the raccoon races with. I get it.
Dylan, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you. And yeah, super inspiring to watch your journey and look forward to seeing you in Nice.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. And when are you racing again? Are you gonna get back out there on the floor?
New York, I'm looking to hit. So yeah.
All right, solid. Yeah, so you got about 10 weeks for that. So
Yeah, exactly. I might do a Deca in April. I think it's a Deca Strong,
okay.
which is interesting, right? Because that's no running, and my running is my weakest part. So I've been trying to get the running up. So I got to figure out how to approach the training.
If you got any questions, I've done those as well. Just reach out and I'd be more than happy to spitball some ideas with you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
You're absolutely welcome. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors, Atmananda Yoga. You guys have got to check out their yoga alignment mat. I've been using this for a long time. As you know by now, I've studied and trained with them as a yoga teacher, and the mat is incredible to deepen your practice and to ensure a lifelong injury-free practice. Visit growthguide.love/alignment for more info or to buy. Be sure to use code GROWTH at checkout for 15% off. One of the perks of hosting your own podcast is that you could sponsor your own brand. On that note, this episode is sponsored by Spirit Squad. You tired of your Matrix standard issued uniform? Have you pulled the thread and need some new ones? This calls for some 5D level ascension gear, such as our 432Hz classic hoodie and our Resist the Program Third Eye Kitty tee. Spirit Squad's got you covered. From ceremony gear to pre-ceremony gear to post-ceremony gear, we have anti-ceremony gear too. Are you raising consciousness while little ones are raising hell? We have the perfect gear for drop-off, pickup, and serving in the 3-foot kingdom. While you're at it, Spirit Squad has mini sizes, like our Feral Child shirt, strong enough for your little, yet sends a message to the fearful and weak. Give this one some space. Grab your Spirit Squad gear now at spiritsquadsupply.com, and welcome to the rebellion. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love.